This is Monday, August 14th, 2017. It's 4:30 p.m. We are in the Thomas J. Smith Council Chambers. We will be rolling downhill tonight. I do want to, well, let's see. We've got a 10-year award, Sharon Stonehouse. Looking forward to that. 45 years of service. We're going to have Mayor's Awards. Number 3, we've got a public hearing, consideration of sale of property locally known as 914 Louisa Street, City of Burlington, Iowa, with conditions. Mr. Tislin.
This again is a property the city acquired a while ago through our abandoned building program. It's a vacant lot. The home was in a condition that needed to be demolished, and did have the neighbor at 1226 South 10th Street just recently submit a application to purchase the property, just to expand his lot size. Did have someone else call, possible interest in building an actual house there. Didn't know if that was something they wanted to go forward with, but did let him know of the meeting date. But the neighbor to the north would express interest in taking it regardless.
Okay.
Council, are we good?
Is there a bid that we should?
$500
There's a minimum,
from the neighbor
yeah.
to the north, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, sir.
And
Good.
under the conditions, it does lay out a little bit more if someone is to purchase it, what their time frame is, just so it's more clear, so.
Thank you, sir. Number 4, public hearing consideration of an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Burlington, Iowa by amending the standard penalty for violation of the city code. It's going to be the first reading on that, Chief.
Yeah, just briefly, this is in regards to the indigent defense bill. Bottom line, if there's a criminal sanction or jail time, incarceration underneath the city code, the city statute, we could be held responsible for that charge for the defense of the individual charged under that code.
Really?
So we're recommending we change that to leave the fines in place. And if there's a situation that would lead to that, I mean, we mirror almost every state code that there is, and so it can still be charged under a state code.
Okay,
This was the recommendations of our city attorney.
okay.
You guys good?
Yep.
Okay.
Explained that very well. Thank you, Chief.
Number 5 is a consideration of a lease agreement between the City of Burlington and Weingard Realty Company for the Rock Island Freight House property at 710 North Front Street.
This is locally known as the Big Muddy's property. The city of Burlington owns the land underneath the property, and our lease agreement is a land lease with Weingard Realty Company. They did express an interest in renewing this agreement at this time. It was set to expire in 2031, so it had 14 years left, but looking at a different, they subleased the property out, looking at a new subtenant for that property and wanting a longer period, initial period for them to come in initially and operate that. So, so that would give them the full 25 years under the first
I see.
term, and then that additional 25-year renewal. So, both attorneys for the city and for Weingard have reviewed it. Didn't have any questions. The only change was kept the initial term $3,000. That's what the annual payment was for the existing one set to expire in 2031. Kept that at $3,000 and upped the further 25-year renewal to $6,000. So those were the only changes in the lease. And some just minor language at the end of the lease, I think, that added in by our attorney.
Under number 12, condition of lease. Says shall provide leasing with an unobstructed view of the lease premises due east of Mississippi with the exception of the existing Coast Guard building. What is that?
12, can you find that? Don't believe those are there any longer, so.
That's what I thought.
Probably.
It's been part of the lease probably for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could probably get that taken
Yeah.
out.
I'm trying to think, where's the building
Mhm.
east of Big Muddy's? Okay.
You good? Before we go to number 6, I wanted to do this right on the onset of the meeting. My computer wasn't working, but I have an announcement that I need to make, and I'm going to read an email And after I make this announcement, we're going to move through this meeting. I just want to say that I've got no comments now, and I don't have any comments after the meeting, so. But I've received an email from Councilman Scott today. I take that back, it was yesterday. And it reads, Mayor, effective immediately, I am resigning my seat on council. The council has a very important job to do the next few months. I'll have to work closely with staff, and at this time, I am a distraction for the council and staff. Tim Scott.
I think we should table that at this time, right?
Not that.
No?
Okay,
That-
hold that thought, brother.
Actually, that'll come up, Kathleen will prepare whatever needs done for the regular council meeting
Okay.
for responding on that and provide some advice for what your options are at that point, too.
Okay.
Good.
Okay, next we have number 6, public hearing, consideration of plans and specs for the 2017 Jefferson Street parking improvements. Jess?
I'm Jesse Howe, city engineer. What we have for you here is a prepared set of plans and specifications for Jefferson Street. Real brief overview, you can see what it is now versus what it will be. Top is what it is now, bottom is what it will be. The basic project background on this is we're revamping the 200 block of Jefferson Street to provide more parking. The new concept includes 18 total spaces, 2 handicap with fully accessible ramps, 2 police business only parking spots down towards the east end on the south side, and 14 standard public use spaces. About a month ago, we had a meeting with the stakeholders in the project. You can see them listed there: police, fire, downtown partners, and parks. We took quite a bit of input from that meeting and incorporated, all the things the various departments were looking for into the plans and specs, and we have a finished set now. So, next slide. A couple of things that you'll note here that I wanted to mention to everybody. On the left-hand picture, you can see that joint line. That will effectively be the new curb. So parking will come up to that joint line. All of the light posts will be moved back. The planters will be removed, and all the trees will be removed on the south side of that block. On the north side, it'll be not the joint line over top there, but the one to the left. So in removing back to that joint line, that'll be where the parallel parking is. So you'll remove the planters, the trees, and most of the light posts will stay, but a couple of them will get located back closer to the buildings. The only thing that's maybe problematic is any kind of outside cafe seating. I just wanted to mention that, but there is still space to maneuver those in there, but they'll take some modification to get the same footprint that
Yeah.
we're getting before. So
Can you repeat to me again what's going to be missing from my picture on the right?
on the right, okay, so everything stays except the planters. All the planters come out because they're straddling that joint line.
Okay,
So we'll take those out. Everything where those came out will be poured back with the exposed aggregate so it matches the rest of the panels surrounding it. And then those areas will be parking. Really, the only thing on this side is moving light posts back and taking out the big tree planters.
okay. Because obviously parking is a problem, but we still, trying to find that happy medium, so.
Right, and you'll still have the tree wells, the metal ring type
Okay,
structures
okay.
there that house the trees, but you just won't have the big elevated planter boxes that
Yeah.
were proving problematic when
Yes,
it
sir.
came time to cut those down and remove the stumps and things of that nature.
For the trees that are being removed that are just being removed completely, are they going to be moved or just cut down and?
I think they're just cut down and disposed of, yeah.
I've got a
Okay.
problem with that, man.
Yeah.
It's funny, just.
Any other questions on this one?
How long will this take?
Okay. I
Next
forgot my last slide. Sorry
Last
about
slide,
that.
Jesse.
Oh, thank you.
We did, on the budget side of things, initially we were at 65,000. When we went through and got to this point where we're at in the drawings and got everything down to square one, we did find a few things that were missing in the initial estimate, plus some of the input that we got from the stakeholders. So you do see a pretty significant bump in the price, up to 112,000 from originally we had 65. There was quite a bit of pavement that didn't make the original estimate that will need to be taken care of, to satisfy some of the downtown rules, as well as, we had a couple of the parking spots where we didn't have that square foot area called out in the original estimate. So that unfortunately did go up. We're going to try to do what we can there and maybe use some ADA funds that we have to maybe offset this hit to the budget, but it is going to be over that 65,000. Tentative schedule is receive bids mid-September, start construction early to mid-October, and then finish before the end of the year.
How much of that do you think we'll be able to recoup with the ADA funds?
ADA, probably in the neighborhood of 15 to 20,000.
Those are still funds that we have. We just have a separate
Right.
account that we have set aside road use tax funds to do the ADA ramps as we do projects. So it's not like we're avoiding costs. It's just like which pot are you pulling to pay out of?
Yeah.
The remainder of it, I think, is being paid for with a transfer from road use tax, going back on my memory, but I haven't looked at that since budget time. We have adequate funds in the road use tax fund to deal with the higher amount as it is.
You guys good?
Needs to be done, so yeah.
Be a nice improvement, actually.
Okay, you good? All right. Jesse, thank you. Next is number 7, resolution awarding contract for the 2017 flow metering project.
Okay. So we've touched on this before, but I'll go ahead and give you a quick overview. Basically, we were procuring flow meters so we could support our master plans, support future stormwater monitoring, and just flow monitoring all around. We don't have really good data on pipe capacity, additional flow we can add, things of that nature. So that's what this is going towards. And as I mentioned, it's going to be a pretty key component in our master planning as far as which areas of town we can expand easily now versus which areas we're going to have to upsize pipe, things like that. So we're procuring several of the non-contact flow meters like you see in the bottom right, and then some submersible ones. These basically are a lot more safe and easy to remove and reinstall if you ever need to, versus the traditional flow monitors that you have to climb clear down in the manhole.
We're purchasing these flow meters so that, and
Correct.
how, we can reuse these, down the road and?
Yep, we can reuse them, we can move them all over. The plan with the master plan is to move them all over town, so once we find, areas where we have a lot of wet weather flow, we can chase those up the system, so we can pinpoint where we're doing our future improvements as far as lining, sewer replacement, things of that nature, so. And we'll have good flow information, so like I said, when we look at areas of town to expand in, we'll
Right.
have that as well. Any other questions on this before I go to the bid results? The budget for this was $150,000. We received 2 bids. One was $118,118, and the other was $165,930. We're recommending that we award to Hawk the lower amount, and we expect to, well, rather than construction start, we expect to receive these in 5 to 10 weeks. So early to late September.
Questions?
Looks good.
All right,
Thank you, Jesse.
thanks.
Number 8, resolution approving contribution to Dankworth Park Pool Dome Project.
This is tied to the lease agreement that was approved previously at the council meeting with the dome project. They are looking to apply for a grant in the near future, and part of that is looking at local contribution. All this contribution listed in here is currently, I guess, the $25,000 is within our budget. It's in the CIP for a pump improvement in FY18. That's something we'd delay until spring to make those improvements so that it could count towards their project. And the $45,000 listed is, I guess, essentially a refund or payback of the lease payments collected between September 18th and September of 2018 and April of 2020, although it's not listed as a payback, so that it counts as part of their grant.
What
match.
happens, we had this listed originally as a project to do in 2021,
Yeah,
2020?
Currently, we have a pool concrete deck replacement in FY '22 for $100,000. They are doing that deck replacement as part of their project to install the dome, and have asked that we pay them upfront some of that cost in lieu of us having that in our CIP.
So our CIP had us contributing later on, so we don't have the funds, I mean, that's coming from hotel
Essentially-
motel.
Yeah,
This will have to accommodate in a different format, the amount that we selected here for our contribution, working out with them, matches their lease payments for the first 2 years. So
yeah.
even though we didn't have it identified as a source of funds in these earlier years, we do essentially have a new source of funds that we wouldn't have otherwise been receiving.
So $45,000 matches their payment over that time period. And John's here recognizing the cost of it, whether that's sufficient or not, or if it needs to be a different amount. John would talk on that.
Mr. Freeling?
This 2-year time frame was put in here initially based on the initial conversations with the lease agreement that we'd forego that payment for the first 2 years, have a lower amount. That wouldn't qualify for the grant application for a contribution. So this is a direct payment,
Okay.
essentially taking those funds, but
Hello. Mr. Freeling?
Questions?
I think is the main thing, your overall project scope that you're looking at doing and how this fits in within that.
Yeah, we will be replacing the entire deck, which we've been getting some pricing, and it will be right up close to that 100,000 that was budgeted initially. What we'd like to see is if we get the 22.5 for 3 years, that reimburses, which would be 67.5 all told, but it's still substantially less than the 100 I mean, I understand it's different years, but it is still substantially less than the initial budgeted
Right,
amount,
right.
which would work, I mean, that would help us out with the project overall, so.
Would you be okay with that coming in over a course of 3 years?
Yeah,
as a-
absolutely, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we're working we've got that part
Okay.
worked out, so, yeah, that would be great.
Is this a Vision Iowa thing you're going after? or what?
It's the CAT grant, which is
Okay.
administered by Vision Iowa, but it's not apparently the project, the grant that was Bees Park or whatever it went, not so well.
The programs have been modified over the
Yeah,
years.
Right,
it's-
right. Yeah, since I've been on it, I'm sure they have.
Yeah. So,
Everybody's good?
So you'll be modifying the term in there to,
we just
instead
change
of
it to
45
3
to...
years and have that matching the lease period to 2021.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Freeling.
That's one thing we talked about with the grant application, would need approval from the council for that grant application as
Yes.
well, so.
We intend to send that in about October 1st, so we'd like to have that done middle of September, so there's some time in between to approve the actual, we can show you the actual grant application.
Yeah, that's good.
Sounds good.
Okay, thanks for all your work, John.
Thanks.
Okay, let's move to the proposed consent agenda. Number 1 is a resolution approving demolition nuisance abatements for various properties. Are we good? Number 2
Yeah,
is...
but every
Okay.
month, I look at that every time, and I look at the out-of-state owners. I mean, It just bothers me.
Number 2, resolution approving the application for the purpose of receiving benefits from the State Revolving Fund Water Resource Restoration Sponsored Project. Jess?
So as you guys know, we are faced in the next couple of years with eliminating a lot of our CSOs. As part of that process, we are pursuing state revolving fund loans. And as part of that program, we can get this grant basically, which allows us for up to 10% of the overall project in loan forgiveness by installing green infrastructure or different stormwater improvements. That down at the bottom of this, you can see there's a couple of things that the green projects kind of entail. They're kind of different than your normal get the water to the pipe and then get it to the river type of effect, where you're using plants and retention and infiltration to clean that water before it goes directly to the river. So, next slide. Here's the two main projects. There's 6 or 7 projects that I think Nick has a slide of that might be worth showing right now. But the two main ones are a permeable pavement on the south side of Grimes School, elementary school, and then a bioretention filter on the north side. Those are the two biggest ones that we're really going for the most. I want to say the price tag, well, we'll get to that, but go ahead and show the rest.
Switch to the overhead, Stephanie.
Yeah, switch there. So these are the different project locations that we were looking at green infrastructure for that are going ahead in the application. Like I said, you have the two sites at Grimes, and then there were various spots in the Locust sub-basin where we were doing underground storage and filtration. It's kind of hard to see, but there were some intersections there where we were going to put underground storage at the intersections, do some upgrades to manholes and things of that nature. So basically the water goes into this filter first, and then any overflows go back into the storm system.
And show that bottom picture in the center, kind of shows kind of what bioretention is.
Yeah.
If you want to zoom in on that, you can.
So that's what a parking lot biofilter, retention filter would look like there. Basically, like I said, you'd cut the curb out, water would go in there, pool in there for up to 24 hours, but if it ever gets to the point where it overwhelms your bioretention filter, it goes over into an overflow and then back into the storm system. The benefit of these is all of the chemicals and things that run off a regular parking lot get trapped in the soil. There's chemical processes in the soil that actually will clean that up, and you keep using that filter over and over as kind of a filter for different potential contaminants, where you wouldn't have that in a traditional storm sewer.
This is the state-sponsored projects, as he's mentioning, the 10% funds that get put in. The state essentially, bless you, provides you funds to do towards a project such as this. It's not part of your loan balance
Right.
that you're paying back. So this is essentially, given that you're already doing work, that you're doing a revolving loan fund, they provide a grant to do this type of project.
Right.
So as HR Green has worked with our engineering staff and Public Works on the first phase of the Mazel project, they were tasked at the same time with looking at the dollar amount that would be available towards this sponsored project goal at this point, and looking at what potential projects could be done and what would get the most significant reduction in stormwater runoff for that dollar amount. As the projects were selected to be chosen, I think the ones that you chose were designed to be at the highest end of
Right.
your bang for the buck in terms of stormwater runoff elimination.
Right. So in addition to all the environmental things I was talking about, it does take some storm water out of the storm system to where you don't have that continuous flow at the highest rate like you would. The cost for all of the locust projects, as you see here, is $619,000. The two at Grimes School, I think, were around 300.
It'd be about 300,000, and in the end, you get 10% of your total loan amount, of which we will wrap the total construction loan, the actual construction loan. And it's honing in pretty close around that 4.5 million for locust separation. So we won't be able to accomplish the full SRF, the sponsored project grant amount. Just we don't have enough money to be able to cover all of those. But likely the two Grimes School projects look like they're good candidates. There's an education aspect. Then we've in the application, which I didn't put in your packet, it was like 110 pages. There's a letter there from Pat Cohen, as we'll work out some sort of a maintenance agreement should that ever happen. But they are supportive of this type of project, not because it's just the aesthetic value, but also the educational value that they can, show the kids and teach the kids about the value of what this bioswale and permeable pavement would bring. So,
And then just to reemphasize, as part of the loan forgiveness, all the costs for these sponsored projects would be covered through the loan forgiveness, so it would have zero impact on the budget.
Thanks for bringing that up, too.
Big project.
Council?
Just move.
Okay. All right, sounds good.
Thank you, Jesse, again. Thank you, Nick.
Number 3, a resolution approving the acceptance of a staffing for adequate fire and emergency response grant, SAFER grant, number EMW 216FH00382. Chief? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I just got done telling Jim this morning I didn't have a PowerPoint, but I put one together after that, just so you have something to look at besides me. So a little background on the SAFER grant. I think in your paperwork the memo I have there, I actually have a typo I put in there, was approved in February, it's actually approved in January, on January 16th. And that was for me to apply for the SAFER grant, and that was for 6 firefighters. And I know we had a big discussion at the time about the cost and why we were asking for 6 and not 3. But just to reiterate that, it was 6 firefighters, and the way the SAFER grant works now is they pay 75% of the cost of wages and benefits for the first 2 years, and then on the 3rd year, they pay 35%, leaving the city with the remainder on those years. So at that time, that was the grant that I put in. Those were the cost estimates right there. The 3 years we had estimated was about $631,000. That was before we went through the budget process, and during the budget, you approved the 1 additional firefighter. We did not hire, we were holding off on that, waiting to hear back on the SAFER grant. So when you see the budget numbers at the end, those are taking that into consideration, that budgeted person that we have not hired. July 28th, we were awarded the SAFER grant, and the dollar amount they figured was $1,002,174. At the time when we talked about the 6 firefighter grant, or the 6 firefighters, why were we asking for that? I went through a whole list of things. I'll kind of touch on some of those again. A couple of the bigger points were, that would get us back about to the staffing level where we were 20 years ago, when we did about half the number of calls. I'm probably repeating things we've talked about here, but I think that's an important thing. And again, the call volume in emergency services, while it's good to keep our skills sharp and to bring in some extra revenue, when you're in emergency service, there's only so much how many calls you can take where you start actually putting your community at risk that we're not going to be able to respond to the calls, risk to the employees, more injuries, that sort of thing. So the justification for the grant, the main thing that SAFER looked at was the 1710 standard NFPA. it deals with response times and response, how many people you have responding to a call. So that was the main focus of the grant, because that's the question that you had to answer. Where are you at now in relation to 1710, and where will you be if we grant you a SAFER grant? So we are right below the number of firefighters. Again, that's 15 on a regular structure fire. They want you to respond with 15 firefighters in 9 minutes or less. So on a normal day, we have about 10 people on duty in Burlington, and then we have 4 on a good day coming from West Burlington. So even on paper, if everybody was available, nobody was on a call, we only respond with 14. So rarely do we meet the 15 on scene within 9-minute response time. With the 2 additional, that gets us right at the 15, at least on paper. Again, we have to consider the number of calls we go on per day. Right now, we're averaging between 14 and 15. Some days it's upwards of 20 or over 20 calls. So chances are somebody's out on a call, you don't necessarily get the whole 15 to respond. The next one is the OSHA 2-in and 2-out rule. They're always asking about that. So outside of a rescue scenario where you're having to save somebody in a fire, we have to have 4 people on scene in order to go into a house, in order to attack a fire from interior. So it's important that we have 4 people on scene, and the way we do that now is we normally have 2 people on an engine and 2 on an ambulance. So we need the ambulance to go with the engine on all the fire calls. And I'll talk about that here in just a second, but they need to be in the same area of town and respond and get there about the same time. So the next one there is the 3rd Staffed Ambulance, and if you ask any of our guys, probably they'll say that's the #1 thing that we really need. Most of our ambulance calls are about 75% of our call volume. I'll show you a map here in a minute of where our calls are at, but most of them are north of our dividing line of Station 1 and Station 2. So we have a strategic location for our 3rd Out ambulance that takes a lot of the call volume off of the central, the ambulance station at Central Station. Right now, and in there, I think I wrote 40 times per month. Station 2 covers Station 1 territory, so they come up from Summer Street Station and they go somewhere in the downtown or out off Sunnyside or Lenox Park or maybe West Burlington. All this to the north of about West Avenue is what we call Station 1's territory. So that ambulance has to respond from out at the airport up on this side of town, and that happens on average about twice per day. Several times already today that's happened. And so when I report our response times every month, and I say, I don't factor out any of those long times, so that does increase our average response time, because coming from Summer Street to say Lenox Park or West Burlington, those are gonna be some longer response times for us.
So I maybe was tuned out for just a second, but when you're talking about a 3rd ambulance, are you talking about a mobile somewhere away from the fire station, parked and waiting for a call? Is that what
Yes. So this last spring, when we had the staffing available, if we had any number above 10, so if we had 11 people working, we staffed a 3rd ambulance, and daytime hours until about 9 p.m. they were stationed in West Burlington. And that was I can click ahead and I can click back. So you can see that's West Burlington Fire Station right there. So this was the territory we outlined for them. So they got about a 1/3 of the calls, which then helped the Central Street or the Central Station ambulance not have to run out to all those calls. So it really evens out the call volume when we can do it.
In West Burlington, so you're gonna keep him posted up at West Burlington Fire Department?
During the day. Right now, we're actually working with Public Works to find a nighttime spot for them, because their station isn't set up for sleeping quarters or staying there 24/7. They just don't have the facilities for that. So, working with Nick, hopefully we can come to some agreement there where we can put the ambulance in there probably after 5 o'clock at night. And that's still, on this map where it'd be somewhere, is that West Burlington Avenue? So somewhere in here. It's still a very good location strategically for us. A lot of our calls are actually right here off West Avenue. Sunnybrook, Rosebush, all of those, the assisted living facilities, nursing home, those account for a lot of our calls. And West Burlington, about 40 calls per month. From Public Works, those will be much closer. So that's still a good spot. Also keeps the other ambulances in their stations and able to run with their engines more often. So for the 2-in and 2-out rule. Make sure I touched everything on the 3rd Out ambulance here. And then the last one there is overtime savings, and in the grant application, they even ask you, are you planning on seeing some overtime savings with the grant? And yes, we are, and that's not the primary reason that we pursued the SAFER grant, but it is a big reason, and asking for 6 versus 3 really makes the overtime savings a possibility. So what we're looking at is adding 2 firefighters per shift and increasing our daily staffing only by 1, so up to 11 on a normal basis. That allows for somebody to get injured, somebody to be sick, and not have overtime every time that person's off. So that's really what drives our overtime now, is anytime you have a long-term injury, even for a month, every time that person is supposed to work, now you're paying an overtime shift. So that gives us a 1-person cushion in there. So that, our budgeted overtime this year is $150,000. We should at least see about a half of that reduced, so about a $75,000 savings in the overtime budget.
I've got to ask you this, Chief. Can we get a SAFER grant at 3 men?
I can't amend the SAFER grant now, no.
Okay.
Would you
Part of-
ask? I didn't hear you ask.
I needed to ask him if there was, from questions, but if there was any way that if we couldn't do the 6, that we could apply for the 3.
Yeah, when I brought it up the first time, the big thing was, like I said, they're asking about 1710, and we're talking about 1710. Just adding 1 person doesn't always get us to where we need to be to meet 1710. So,
Thank you.
and again, the overtime savings wouldn't be there, and you wouldn't be able to staff a 3rd out ambulance a lot of the day. So, I'm sorry, Jim, did I interrupt?
I was essentially gonna say the 1710.
Okay. Again, so that's the map. The pink line or red line that I drew on there, that's our dividing line for the 2 stations. That'd be Station 2, Central Station. That's West Burlington. And that's not our territory map, but we do have a territory map divided up for when we call it the 3rd station, or Station 3, West Burlington. So when we do man the 3rd station, we have set territories that divides the town up really, really good for our purposes. That's a representation of all the calls since July 1st from our reporting system, not including all the county calls or into Illinois.
Wow.
That's what all the blue dots are.
That's amazing,
are
isn't it?
calls,
Isn't that
so-
something? But these are not all ambulance calls, they're
No,
some.
those are all types of calls.
Types of fire,
Yeah,
But most of them are ambulance.
yeah. Austin from GIS got that going for me today, so I thank him for that. He does a great job on that kind of
That's
stuff.
cool.
The budget. So these are probably more accurate than the numbers I gave you. Stephanie got these together for me this week. So moving ahead in FY '18, if I would accept the SAFER grant, I have to get in there and accept it yet. We hired the 6 firefighters and got them on board. It's gonna take a month or so. We have to do background checks, physicals, get their gear lined up. So we're talking about sometime in October. And as soon as you hire the first guy, then that starts your 3-year period, or gal. So we'll hire all 6 to start within a day or 2 so we can do their initial training all together. So if we do that sometime in mid-October, for the remaining of this fiscal year, the difference in our budget will basically be 0. I think Stephanie maybe had a little bit of savings to our overall budget. That's because we didn't hire the 1 person that's already in our budget. So that salary amount would cover the additional cost. FY '19, again, that same person takes off. I think I had estimated $135,000 per year and take off the salary of this person that we have in the budget, and that's how Stephanie came up with the $46,900 for fiscal year '19. FY '20, that's when the city has to pick up 65% of the cost of salaries and benefits for 6 people, and that's where the 219 comes from. FY '21, the grant will end October, whatever. Whenever we hire these people this year, then 3 years from now, the grant's over, they no longer pay anything. So for most of that year, October through July 1st, that whole cost is on the city, and that's why it jumps so high in year 3, or FY '21. And then in '22, that's the total cost of 6, actually, that's the total cost of 5 with no grant money. The 1's already in the budget. some things is not included in there. There's no, the overtime savings is not included in that amount.
So if I understand that right then, Chief, then the $75,000 would cover FY19?
No, we'll still owe the 46,000
Yeah.
additional.
What you're saying, the question, if the savings in overtime usage could potentially offset that 46,000
Right.
for that year, yes.
Yeah,
The answer is yes.
yes.
Okay.
So the only, the real,
And follow-up thought then.
yeah, please.
Going forward, then it would be more than 75 for the next year, you'd probably save? Would that be a true statement?
The overtime savings, it would be about the same. You would always save about half of what we're budgeted now. It's hard to say. Based on past experience, the last time we had a SAFER grant, we increased 3 but didn't up our minimum staffing. We were around 56,000 in fire overtime, so I'm estimating 75,000.
So in 20, then we're talking about $140,000 then, right?
Taking off the
140.
75,000, yes.
Yeah.
You know what, I don't follow you
In-
on that.
And
But then we're still
increased
talking
cost
400
for us,
and 221 and then,
Yeah.
you know.
450.
minus the 75. So did you have a thought? I'm just talking out loud here.
I'm thinking out loud, but my concern is that when it's all in our lap and what's gonna be expected from the city. And, you know, it's a concern for the city. I mean, it's not a personal concern. I've only got 2 years left, bro. But again, well, I'm just saying, it's a concern, and I'm just wondering, how's that gonna play out? If the backfill, if they hammer us on that, I'm just saying, how's that gonna play out? Because is there a chance to re-up for the SAFER? And is there a time frame?
I would say re-upping for the SAFER it was an outside chance this time. I would say a third SAFER grant would be like, they're gonna say, you haven't absorbed the cost now, we're not. They do this hoping that eventually the city would do it themselves.
Sure.
I don't know if I've ever heard of a city getting a third SAFER grant. A second was not, like, just a handful that I ever seen get a second one. Worst case, in my opinion, for the SAFER grant is that your FY 21, October 1st, or whatever the date is, and the grant's over, the 6 lowest people on seniority, you know, or gone. Or the last SAFER grant, we did it through attrition. And it's hard to say, I can't say 3 years out, but every year there's people leaving the fire department. We have a lot of people that are eligible, even more will be eligible to retire, you know, come 2020. Not that I'm offering that up, I'm just saying, if what you're saying
No,
would come true, and there's like, hey, you know, but the SAFER grant, you are committed through if I accept it, we're committed through 2020, whatever the date is that we start the grant. If at any point during there you don't hire back and keep the minimum, it'd be 39 plus the 6, so 45 firefighters. If you drop below that, then you
Gotta give some
forfeit
money
whatever
back.
they've paid and you have to pay them back.
Oh, you do forfeit, huh? Oh, okay.
Yeah, if in year 2 you say, no, we don't want this anymore, then you pay back year 1's. That's what they say. I'm sure cities have done it. I have to see if they actually stand by it. I assume they do.
This hiring 6 additional firefighters, that's not a challenge? I mean, there are people
No,
already.
well, we just did the testing a couple months ago, so we have a list we had 12, we hired 1, we've got 11 left on the list. So there are challenges, like I said, background checks, physicals, the training. Most everybody we hire, there'll probably be a mix, maybe half and half paramedics, not paramedics, so that we'll have to get them through that. They're all firefighter trained already, so that decreases our training time on the front end. We don't have to run them through firefighter 1 and firefighter 2 training. They come with that already. The gear, and I guess I was gonna talk about that a little bit. There are some additional costs like the gear, the clothes, the physicals, all that does come with a cost. Most of that we've already budgeted for gear. We haven't spent, obviously, we're just partway into this year. We haven't spent the turnout gear money. That will help. We have some other turnout gear that will probably take care of itself. We've saved back some other capital money thanks to West Burlington. They gave us some SCBA bottles when they got a grant and replaced all theirs, so that saved us from having to spend about, I think it was $7,800 that we had in our budget for that we could spend on equipment, so. All in all, the additional costs aren't a huge factor. We can absorb those in our budget now.
Last time we went through this process, the SAFER grant allowed us at a time when we were on a hiring freeze and had gone down significantly in staffing to bring back 3 of those positions for two plus years. But at that point, we were on our 5-year process of trying to eliminate deficits, and we were very firm about, and the council was very firm about, we don't have funds identified to continue those positions once the grant funding ran out. And we had it built within all of our budgetary models to, as those positions went off of funding, to use the next 3, it was 2 retirements that were the way the grant worked, just timing on positions to use the next 2 retirements to get back down to the staffing without the SAFER grant. But we were very clear about that on the front end and carried it through to the back end. You're asking about on the back end now, when you're looking at what the full costs are on it, we've not been consistent about saying what we're doing with those positions on the back end outside of I'd have to say the budget process here you wanted to see the 6 positions funded if possible, but there were no statements that were saying that we're firm that we're going to find the funding, nor were you in a position where you're saying once the funding was out, if we go after the grant, are you going to eliminate them? You kind of need to have, at least on a preliminary perspective, what are you hoping to achieve on the back end, but recognizing the fact that it's going to be a different council seated at the point where
That's
those
the point.
decisions are
Yeah, you're
made.
gonna have different people sitting up here. Maybe not, maybe I'll be.
But I still think it's good that, I want to be honest with you, I feel about this SAFER grant, the way that we did with the last one, looking at with the information that I have right now, that way that's where I would want to move forward with it. But again, this is just the work session. And speaking of that, before I forget, I need to have this moved from consent to regular agenda.
Me too, I was gonna bring that up.
Yeah, and I talked about, get to the end of the grant, get rid of, that sounds a terrible way to say it, but,
Yeah.
all
Yeah,
6,
no.
well, there's a middle ground, we already budgeted for the 1.
Right.
We could just budget for 2 more and then have 3, and then, as long as we have a staffing level of 11, we could still keep the 3rd ambulance staff 24/7, 365, which is a great improvement from where we are now.
Yeah, that's.
But like I keep saying, in 2017, at the end, I think we're gonna say, in a 20-year time, we have doubled our calls. We didn't quite do it last year, but in a 20-year period, we're gonna reach it this year. The last 3 months, we were at 440 calls, 445, 455 in July, which is an all-time record for our department. And I just don't see that number going, there's no reason to expect that that's gonna go down. So when you're talking 3 years from now, I don't know where that number's at per month, where it's even more critical to have the 3rd ambulance staff.
And you bringing that up, that's a good point, because there's no telling where we'll be 3 years from now. And, we may be, the community may be saying, hey, we need 5 more, something. So, there's no telling how that's going to work out. But, boy, I'll tell you, that's, it's going to be tough just to hang on to looking at the 3, that's going to be easier, but hanging on to those 6. And to me, that just blows me away that this was the staff that we had in the 80s, or what'd you say, 20 years ago?
Yeah, 20
Right.
years ago.
It-
Even
Let me
before
read
that.
this sentence to you. 6 additional firefighters will bring staffing levels back to where they were 20 years ago, when we had about half of the current call volume. 1997 was 25 calls versus 2016, which was 4,800 calls.
The silver tsunami's real, my friend.
If that doesn't blow you away and make you want to get behind trying to figure out how we can keep 6 additional firefighters past the SAFER grant, I don't know what will.
The bigger question now is, do we authorize him to say, yes, take it?
I don't see
In
how.
my opinion, since we authorized him to
apply for it, we
Right.
implicitly said, we're gonna take it, you know? So the question is, can you find, in fiscal year 20, can you find $130,000? And you can't say that, except you gotta say, tie it into something else we're gonna talk about later and say, well, if we're gonna save a couple $100,000 here, but then on alternative, like you said, with the backfill going away, then that also
It's gonna change things,
brings
man. That's gonna change
throws
things
a
a lot.
wrench into the situation. But in my opinion, we authorized him to file the application, so how can we not turn around and say no? You know, I think we should have thought that through, and in my view, we did, so. I think we do it and we find a way to pay for it, and if that means at the end of 3 years reducing something, then fine, let's do it, but public safety is our number one goal here, so.
That's a fact, my friend. That's a fact.
Yeah, I feel that way too. The fact that we should go ahead with the grant, to back off now is really,
I would just say, I think you probably hear from different people than I do on a regular basis, but since we got the grant, so many people came up to me and said, this is a great course. They're probably not thinking long-term implications, but they're all very positive comments about the grant. So,
Just for the record, there's no doubt from, I don't think anybody on the council, and definitely from me, that you guys don't need the staff. That's not the issue, so I just want to put that to bed. It's not like you guys are trying to come in and weasel in extra staff so people can take naps. We understand that you need the help, so.
thank you.
You guys got anything else?
that's all from
Well,
me.
we are moving to regular agenda, right?
Yeah. we're gonna
Yes.
do
Yes.
I was just gonna bring up what's in the packet, showing that to fund these additional by year, what
Yeah.
property tax
Yeah.
increase would
Thank
take.
you, Steve.
I was looking at my thing.
So,
Yeah.
just so anybody else would wanna see that. I'm just gonna pull it up.
And this is all assuming we can't find cuts someplace else.
Right, exactly, just to give you a ballpark, year by year, what it would take to fund these.
Yeah,
Keep a knife, Jim. You can find it there.
well, you could just put this up on the overhead.
Oh, yeah.
You want that?
Except I wrote on mine.
I did on mine, too.
It's got written on there.
Stephanie Stuker. Okay.
74 cents is what, it sounds so little when you say it like that, but I know that's a big, big
But
jump in property tax.
looking at the
from one-
17, once you break the 17 number, now you're thinking, whoa. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, this is without any reduction in the
Right on.
overtime cost. This is straight just by using those numbers.
Another,
Um,
another factor is Stephanie put together the cost for this. I think you did family insurance.
Yes,
So family insurance is 9,000 a year more than single.
right.
And you don't, until you hire 6 positions, you don't know which they're gonna take.
Right.
But if 3 of them are taking the single insurance instead of family, your costs are 27, 30,000 less a year.
Yeah, and then even like cert pay, like Matt said, when he hires them, he's probably not gonna be able to hire all paramedics. So I budgeted the higher dollar amount
Which
for the
might be some
paramedics,
people.
just, so there'll be fluctuation as we move through the budget, where, you know, maybe those numbers won't be as high as they are in 3 years, so.
Still big.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's nothing small about city government, my friend. Chief, you good?
I'm good, if you're good.
You guys good?
Yeah, I am.
We appreciate you and your staff. We really do. Okay, number 4 is resolution approving interlocal agreement between the city of Burlington and Des Moines County for the 2017 Bernie Justice Assistance Grant JAG Program Award. Chief?
No, there won't be any future commitments to this. This is our local grant. Normally, we get this application in April or May, It's been postponed. I don't know if funding wasn't available or what happened with that, but I just got this email last Tuesday that funding's been approved, and we've been approved for $19,900.
Yes.
And we have to share some of that with the county. They're a disparate agency, but they do help us prosecute crimes and put people in jail and keep people in jail. So we need to get this agreement in place to get the grant. There's no match money to the grant. It's just this $19,900. And this year Chief Deputy White and I decided that we wanted to apply for some ballistic blankets. They're 2 foot by 4 foot. They're portable, that the guys can roll up and have them right in the car with them. So when they respond to some of these real critical incidents we've had, they can unroll that shield, put it together, or simply fold it out and put it over the door. So like when officers on or just very recently on Central Street, it would have been just perfect for that situation. Roll up there, open up your driver's side door, roll the blanket out, and now you got some ballistic protection for the lower half of your body if you're gonna use your car for cover. So there's all different kinds of things that we could use these for, and I can't think of a better time or a better way to try to spend this money. So that's kind of where that's what we're gonna apply for. And whether we get it or not is another thing, but we gotta have this agreement to even to begin to apply for the grant, so.
Okay.
Just try to keep our crew protected as best we can, so.
How many would these,
I think we could do 19 total or close, 18 or 19. I mean, we're still getting bids right now, but they're probably gonna be around that $1,000 to $1,200, so. But that would take care of the 14 marked cars that we have. The county already has a few, so they'll start to supplement what they're trying to do, so. I mean, it'd still leave our unmarked cars unprotected, but over the course of time, you know, we can think about some type of capital too. I mean, it's not a huge expense, especially if we can get 14 of them knocked out, so.
All right. You guys good?
Thank you, Chief.
Yes.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, number 5 is resolution approving lease agreement between the Steamboat Senior Center, Inc., and the City of Burlington for lease of city-owned building located at 501 Jefferson Street. Steph.
So they're on a 3-year lease, so this was just up to be reviewed. We actually sent it to our attorney, so it became, our 1-page lease became, 7, 8 pages now, but technically,
You like that, huh?
yeah. There wasn't that many changes. The senior center president, and they've reviewed it, they're fine with it, so basically it's just up for your approval now.
You guys got any problems with that?
Remember you had me sitting in on their monthly meetings, I remember.
All right,
Never
good.
forgiven you for that.
I got 3 more years of dances then. Excellent. Okay, we've got public hearing set for September 5th. First is a consideration of an ordinance amending section 13511, driveway culverts at chapter 135 streets and sidewalks of the Burlington Municipal Code. And B is consideration of plans and specs for the 2017 Vineyard Street Area Drainage Project. So, yeah, some fun with that. We've got we have a presentation tonight. Your number's up. Bruce Workman.
I'm not Bruce Workman, but he will be up here in a second. I just want to introduce Bruce. When we started this program, Bruce volunteered to run it. He's done a great job with it, so I'd like to thank him for organizing it, and then thank the firefighters for going out and taking care of it. As Bruce will explain, it was a lot of work to visit every single address or every residence, place of business in Burlington. It was quite an undertaking. He did a good job with that, so thank you, Bruce, and thanks to the firefighters that did that.
Awesome.
And then Bruce is gonna touch on one other thing at the end, if we don't mind, something that was in our budget that was approved, but we're moving forward on it, so.
What this project was an effort to get buildings and houses that don't currently display address numbers to simply put numbers up, hence the program name, Your Numbers Up. And I included the door knocker, the door hanger that we put on the houses that we found that did not have numbers. There's 11,374 addressable buildings in the city. That number I got from our buddy Austin up at GIS. He developed us a grid map. We broke the city down into 57 sections, and we just plucked away at it, and drove every street and identified out of compliance addresses. So the first pass, we go through, put a door knocker on there, ask them to remind them that it's gonna help you if you need a call for ambulance or fire truck or a police officer, to have your address up. So there's a little bit of debate about how do we go about this. The city code specifically says you must have 4-inch numbers, and some houses have it written out, other houses might have 3-inch numbers. We were worried about, can we find your house if we go to your house? So that was our threshold. And so as it panned out, there was over 500 addresses that did not have numbers up. Now, I would tell you, a lot of these addresses are in the downtown area. A lot of businesses were out of compliance. And then churches don't think they need to put up numbers. Well, we're supposed to go to like the Church of Christ. Okay, which Church of Christ? And so they all got visited, and so after 30 days went by, then we started this in November, so we put the numbers up, and we really didn't, or the door hangers out, we really didn't revisit them until come springtime. We gave them more than 30 days. So about 50% complied, and 50% just haven't done anything. So if for an enforcement issue, that's really going over to our community development department, which Eric has this information as well. And so it was a pretty successful program, getting 52% to comply with this. And you know, in the end, is if you call for an emergency service, we'll be able to get to your house, and that was our goal, to be productive in that respect. On the non-compliant addresses, just interestingly enough, we started numbering the grid from the north part of town with a 1 and the 57 down at the bottom part of town. So these are actually geographically north to south in line. Yeah, so the guys at work diligently went about this and helped with this product. This was a group effort by everybody down at the fire department. And yeah, it is frustrating when we get a call and we got an address, but it's difficult to find. So right now, the compliance rate is almost 98%, which is pretty respectable, but room for improvement. Any questions for me and the fire chief?
No questions, but you're a rock star, and everybody that was involved with that.
Yeah, the guys did, and gals did all the footwork on this.
Awesome.
And the GIS, Des Moines GIS was
That's working out pretty good.
Yeah, they're very helpful. Now, the other item I had, Eric, if you could put up my FY18 capital item. This is just an update on a command car that's been ordered. It's in the FY18 capital budget. We have saved some money by reusing items, equipment in the current car and placing them on a new car. So with this, we went through one car dealer, Carl Chevrolet in Ankeny. They have the state bid for the vehicle itself, so we didn't have to bid that because they're the only one that can bid that. The retail price of the car is $50,000 with all discounts and the options that we took off that. It nets down to about $34,000.
Oh, yes.
Now with that, we still have to put lights, sirens,
Right on.
radios in there, and there's a separate bid for that. And we're refashioning, like we're gonna put the current light bar on this car, and also that slide-out tray, the command post that goes in the back. That's gonna save us almost $7,000 for just that, and another $2,000 for the light bar. So we're reusing items there. And then we're refashioning, like, we have file cabinets in the back. We're all digital now. So we're fashioning the slide-out tool trays for the breathing apparatus and tools, stuff that we use a lot, and it'll make use of, actually make the car safer, because we're gonna put that stuff behind the cage and it won't come flying forward in an emergency.
Good idea.
So that's the update on this car that we should see it end of September, something like that.
Well, good deal, and good deal on getting the savings. Awesome.
Yeah, that worked out well. Okay, thank you.
All right,
Looking
thank
great.
you. All right, thanks
Chief,
again.
Chief, while you're there, do you want to say something about what's happening Wednesday morning at your fire station?
Oh, sure. So we've been doing this tactical fitness program with the hospital for going on a year and a half now. And then they did a little kickoff in the spring where they got a bunch more people to start working out, and they did a bunch of testing. Body measured us all different ways, and then they had us do some fitness things, planks. I don't know, anyway, they have a fitness test. A lot of us did the fitness test, and we did some other stuff where you had to go to the hospital, and then they let you work out for 12 weeks, and they retested everybody. And then Wednesday, they're gonna give out some awards to some of the people that came out of the 12 weeks really improved. So it's pretty dramatic. Some guys have done a really great job with it. The hospital's been awesome with that, so.
Yeah. Good.
So that's Wednesday morning at 8:15. That's our normal workout time. There'll be some of the trainers from the hospital there. And some other.
I'm gonna come on
people.
and bring my Bengay with me, so.
I was gonna ask, are you gonna ask them to work out too?
Yeah, Jim, bring your shorts and t-shirt. It's awesome.
It's
I'll be
It's what, Jim? What is it, Jim? Tell us.
I was sore.
I had to pass up on the workout today because I was too sore from Friday, so.
I'll bring my putter.
They are.
I'll bring Davidson with me. We'll show you guys what's going on.
Have an ambulance nearby.
Yes,
Well, it's important.
Thanks, Counselor. Hey, we're getting 6 more in, so.
I had a question on the numbering. This was brought up as an issue from the council as a concern for something to get addressed, and you got a little over 50% compliance on it, and there's still half of them out there that didn't comply. And I guess the question, is that something where the council is satisfied with where we're at on that, or were you wanting to be more aggressive, which is not the fun part of things, to be more aggressive on enforcement of that?
That's a serious matter, though, I think.
I'd like to have a little time to digest that, but I mean, all the work that they put in to get up to this point of compliance, and it is important, people, I sure would like for everybody to see how important that is.
And I think that is that through your department, if anything was gonna be done, Eric, or is that, where would that?
Well, yeah, it'd be something we'd have to look at to see how it would fit within our schedule. I mean, it's not something we have time to do 500 in the next month or two with.
It's only 250.
Yeah. 250. Yeah, well,
I would assume some of them, since we rechecked, have went ahead and got their
Right,
numbers.
I would think so too.
But it is just a question how you want us to proceed with that.
I know I ran into, well, I didn't run into, but I had a couple comments, not directly, but I'd read somewhere, like on Facebook probably, where there were some elderly people who weren't able to do, to put new numbers on or make them more visible. So I don't know how many of these would even be residential and how many of these would even be people who would need assistance. So I don't know how many of those would be
Yeah,
those kind of situations.
We didn't put it out there or put it on the tags, but we did have some phone calls. I know, actually, Tim took care of at least one, if not two of them. And then trying to think of the people that help people like weatherizing.
community action.
Community
right,
Action,
right,
yes,
yeah.
they volunteered, and I know they put up some numbers as well. So if
Right.
people would call and say, I can't either physically or don't
Okay.
have the money to do it.
Yeah, I would hope, I would hope if,
we got-
if
we
somebody
can help
saw
them.
one of these green tags, they would feel okay reaching out to people. But I know some people didn't evidently, which is too bad. So I hope if there's still people who need it, hopefully they're listening, which maybe they're not.
Well,
Chances are there might not be.
I think moving forward, we just need to be mindful that with everything that we do, we always go in knowing that there's going to be some people that are going to need some type of
Oh, yeah.
of assistance or something. But
Yeah.
again, I would like to have 100% compliance. That's why we did kind of start this process. So
Definitely. I don't know, I know it's definitely time consuming, this kind of a process. and not saying you guys obviously have a lot of time to kill, but I know I don't necessarily want to jump right into, you know, making people pay fines for not complying to this, I guess, but I know it's something we definitely need to stay on top of. I don't want to just put this now on the back burner kind of thing.
So-
They've done so much work.
If people were to call you, could you refer them to somebody?
Right, I still have the information from the gentleman at Community Action.
Okay.
He can do a limited number, but he did all that we asked, which I think was only a couple of
Right.
people that called in.
So we could ask Mr. Rob Sussman to make a point of this on his, since a lot of people listen to your program.
Yeah, everybody listens to Sussman.
What about a mailing to these people? Would that bring
I-
anything?
Part of what, if Eric's gonna proceed with them, he won't, I assume your department, if you do, it'll be a few at a time as you go through the system, and you would be doing a letter notification at the process. I mean, that's what you have to do with any of your stuff to have any legal enforceability on it. So you would be providing them some level of time frame to get that accomplished?
Yeah. And if they wouldn't do it, if we handled that as a nuisance, we'd hire someone to go put letters on their house, I guess is our nuisance process.
Eric, would you just like take come back to us with how you want to proceed with that and just represent that to us on what you want to do? Give you some time to figure out how you want to go through with that, and then we'll put some teeth on it when we get through. You guys satisfied with that?
I mean, yeah, I guess the next process would be something like just sending out, hey, you didn't do this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But also then I guess, you know, if you do that, I would like, you know, giving those people an option if you need assistance, maybe giving them contact information. Would that be okay or not?
If they have questions, they can contact his office. If he's gonna offer assistance some other way, he's gonna find out that there's actually someone who's willing to do that.
Right,
whether
well, I
that's
just didn't know,
working with-
like-
As you've
like
talked about working with
giving-
community action, that was something where I don't think they had a guarantee on,
Right.
I don't think they wanna take on 250.
No, certainly not. And certainly
Residences.
not if it's, you know, like a business or something like that, but just, sometimes people don't think about those things, unfortunately.
Maybe there's some service club in town that would be
I still
looking
think
for a
we could-
project to do.
I still think we've got to community action. I don't think we're going to need to do that many of them. I think most
Oh,
people
no.
are just being slowful, but come back to us on that with your suggestion how you want to proceed, and we'll make sure we get that squared away. Again, Mr. Workman,
Thank you.
tell everybody, phenomenal job. Awesome. We've got, our next discussion item is the Memorial Auditorium, who's,
So, this is a continuation from the last meeting, and we'd tentatively looked at this being a time where Venue Works would have a chance to come and give a discussion, and that's no longer part of
They
the
took care of
process. The last work session, we identified several different options that you could, just general directions that you could look to go. It's still up for the council to determine which direction that they would be interested in proceeding on. In the meantime, Steph and Nick both had a discussion with Steamboat Days. Well, actually, we've had discussions with multiple groups in the last couple of weeks, but they would have, depending on what the council's desires are, they would have a willingness to have a discussion with how they could partner with what we're trying to accomplish down there. But it kind of depends on what you're wanting to see happen down at the auditorium.
okay, before we get into that, to me, I feel like moving forward with the auditorium, it's imperative. I think it's at the top of the paramount list that we get some type of board in place that can oversee and you know, people that are committed to the Burlington Memorial Auditorium, people that care about Burlington, you know, people that are involved with what's going on in Burlington, that we get a board of people that can make sure that they keep an eye on things and that we can get this auditorium back running again. Because I personally, As far as the dollars, I don't want to see us going into those numbers that we were with Venue Works, but if we could get them a little bit lower than where we were before we started this process, and still give the same service to our local acts and to the civic music, to the people that normally use that, then I'm all in.
Well, let's review what we kicked around. I wasn't clear on those two options. I know one was to go through that, would you?
In terms of the two options for us running the facility, one parameter would look at how do we try to staff this at a level that was comparable to what we were, not quite to the level, but comparable to the level that we staffed 5 years ago or so, where we have two maintenance positions, or can't think of what the position title is on those. And then we looked at someone who would be in charge of booking, scheduling, et cetera, for the facility itself.
And we've had that before.
And we've been at that staffing level in the past. You'd also see with that staffing level of part-time, were you gonna put that up? Yeah. You'd have a level of part-times and temp staffing to assist with teardowns and setups for different events that occur during the course of the year. The other main option that was put out there with us running it is if part of your goal is to significantly reduce costs there, to go into an arrangement where you're trying to maintain your existing events that are in there, the meetings that are occurring on a regular basis, the events, whether it's Snowball or what, that are consistently in there on an annual basis, make sure that you're able to meet their needs for having a facility that's functioning, but you're not really open for business essentially for trying to actively get other events scheduled during the course of the year. And
So that difference then in dollars and cents,
you know, that what was put in there,
Is 40,000.
you're seeing the net cost, if we're going more of a staffing where we have the 3 full-time staff plus the other, that shows a net cost of about $395,000, actually a little bit more than the budgeted amount for Venue Works, though they haven't hit that the last couple of years. It's actually a little bit cheaper than what we were netting out, but not significantly. Minimal staffing is that final column. I think that 110,000 is more aggressive than what we would actually get for, I think it would cost us more than that, but you'd see a change there, potentially saving a couple of $100,000 to move down, but you're not gonna have a center that's actively being promoted, and you're just gonna, I think that you'd probably see those that are using the facility not necessarily completely happy with what they're getting for a level of service either. And these are to put out here as two kinds of just two options for different types of philosophies. One's designed around trying to present, maybe not actively going out after the same types of events that Venue Works was, but trying to actively use that facility. And the other's is more after a cost-saving objective. The council has to decide why you want to do this or why you want this brought up. When this was originally asked to be brought up for the council, it was in the context of last budget cycle and how do we look at ways to cut costs.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that's where you're at now as a group.
Well, we decided that closing it is not an option.
It's not an option for me.
Not an option for me.
not at this time.
Okay. If we do the city minimum, does that mean people that want to have wedding receptions or class reunions or something down there, or is that
We're
in
not
the
trying to
picture?
get that done.
Right.
And, I mean, we wouldn't have the staffing within that. Now, you could say you're willing to do that, but your costs are gonna incrementally go up for each different types of event you put on there.
Right.
This is designed with the idea that you're scaling back the utility costs by, when you're going for a week with or two with no events occurring in there, you let the temperature go to a more moderate temp. not as livable a temp. Well, you can't do that and then schedule a wedding to come in,
Right.
so.
But even in the minimal sense, things like civic music could operate in
Yep.
this, right?
Yep, and you would have the building come up to temp to make sure that you address those needs. But
me
again,
too.
you're still not
The
gonna.
the
it's
minimal
gonna-
one is, that's all that's covering, is the few acts here and there, sporadic, and the civic music, high school, all that action. That's
Yes.
what the,
And that's all we've ever had. I mean, the idea of should we go out and see if we can bring in more, when a professional company couldn't do it, I don't know why we think the city could.
I agree with you,
I
Bob.
mean, it's bringing
Well,
these entertainment people in.
I still think this is a big building, it's been around for a long time, and I still think we need to, the bottom line is we've got to get a board that is committed to the auditorium. You know, we just can't keep, you know,
What?
trying to make a decision, you know, every so often because we see that, you know, it's not working. I just think we're here to this point, we tried VenueWorks and that didn't work, and we do need to make a call. Are we gonna do the basics and just realize what we've got, a building it's old? You know, you know, you go to the Mark and there's no bad seat there. You know, you go here, I heard somebody say, we went to a show and I couldn't see anything. You know, I don't know what to say to that. You know, it's just that it still means a lot to a lot of the people in this community, and
How many years VenueWorks has been in? 3?
3.5.
And before that, how many years we were still losing 400,000?
Well, I mean, if you
I
look
thought it
at
was
the
300.
records that I have only go back to 2010, but it's fairly consistent in that 300,000 to 400,000 range.
So we've proven that it's not gonna work.
What's that now?
See, we've proven over 7, 8 years that we've got a facility that doesn't attract.
No, I'm agreeing with you on that. I'm saying, yeah, I totally agree with you on that, and I agree with the basics, making sure that we take care of what we've got going. What I'm saying is that, are we just gonna do that and leave it there? Or can we take advantage of this opportunity and get a board established that we can think about the future and what we are going to do down the road? But
Well, here's my view then. When the VenueWorks contract runs out in 100 days or so,
December 1st.
December 1st, then we go to the minimal in the short term until maybe your idea, or whomever.
I'm there.
Or Steamboat Days, or somebody steps in and says, we want to work something out with you. But in the meantime, I'm in favor of the minimal.
I'm there.
I am too. Again, though, with the understanding, civic music and some of these people would be well taken care of.
And that is the basic minimum. That is getting those taken care of, right?
Yep.
Right.
And to me, I mean, if that number, if you say, well, to do the basics, to get them all taken care of and everything, it's gonna be more like 150 instead of 120. All right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't actually 200,000.
Well, but still, we're ahead
You know,
$200,000.
yeah, all right, but let's keep the acts that
We'll
we've
be
got
going the right
going.
direction.
And again, I would like to explore, and I'd like to see some people send some emails, and I'd like to explore getting a board started and think about the future, what we're gonna do with this auditorium. I just think it's something that needs to be done, so I know I've got some people in the audience that are paying attention. You guys know your friends, talk to them tonight. Are we good?
So are we, basically inviting more people to come Monday to hash this out?
I'm not. I'm good with I'm telling you where I'm at right now. We're not
What,
voting, but.
so table it until when?
No, I'm not. I'm not. I'm good with not tabling it. Where I am, this is just me. Where I am is let's do the minimum. Let's get a board started, and let's get that board going, and they can start working their magic, and let's see what we come up with.
When are
With
we
the
gonna do
basic-
that?
What's that?
When are we gonna get the board together?
I'd like
Create
to
a
see.
board.
I'd like to get that. I'd like to see that happen ASAP.
So when is that realistic? When can we,
The people in.
when is that creation?
I-
So should we invite people to come? If you wanna do this ASAP, if we want
I'm
people
gonna
to
talk to that
get
lady right there in
involved.
the blue before I leave here, and
If you look at how most of our boards are set up, it's by an ordinance process where you have to decide what sort of authority are you giving them, that's not something that happens
Understand.
overnight. That's a several-month process. In the meantime, that might be something that you're wanting to see occur. VenueWorks, I'm sorry. Steamboat Days has expressed a desire to talk about, is there a format where we can partner with the city to try to actively get this facility used, where we have some level of participation in how staffing would come together between the two. It would involve some level of cooperation between us, and it would probably, well, I can't say probably, it would require, if we're asking, doing an arrangement where they were doing some of that marketing of it, some level of a subsidy to be part of that, but
Yeah.
Right on.
But so then that would take care of your board idea, because they already have a board, and they're already involved in something.
I
would you
was-
be interested in us working on a proposal with them and trying to get something that comes back to the council to?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
And we got an email from Don, and we had talked about this earlier, is packaging all three.
That's part of what we
facilities.
had,
Yeah.
even when we spoke with Steamboat Days, was part of our concern is how do we market the three together?
Yeah.
Or manage the three together, but
Yeah.
what were you gonna say, Annie?
Just thinking about the various groups that do use it, yearly, whether it's, civic music, Steamboat Days,
Snowball.
Snowball, all of the groups that are local.
School districts.
School district.
districts, yeah.
I think it's important that maybe one or two people from all of the groups that hold a good solid vested interest in this get together and they become part of this board or, whatever we want it to be, whatever they want it to be. I think, to me, that seems like the best idea, really. If everyone from each one of these groups really wants to keep this building alive, or if they all want to find some sort of building somewhere else, or what have you.
Kind of on a slightly different page there.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You thinking just Steamboat Days?
Well, I'm thinking, get the party started with Steamboat Days to see what they have to
Yeah, I
offer.
agree with you.
Okay.
And also to reach out to some community people.
I was
and
gonna say, I
see if-
certainly don't want anyone else to feel excluded. Like,
Absolutely not.
completely
The
excluded.
reason why I'm not 100% with you is because I don't feel like we really have to, just for the simple fact that we've made that perfectly clear, that that's what we want to protect. That's the bottom line, that we wanted to protect civic music and Snowball, and we want them to know going forward that they're
Right.
protected. That's the basic
That's
minimum.
exactly
So
right, yeah.
I'm interested in hearing what Steamboat Days has to, interested in, man, I can't talk tonight. I'm interested in hearing what Steamboat Days has to say, but I'm also open to reaching out to people and saying, hey, do you have an interest in the auditorium, and would you like to be interested in starting a board, or getting on a board and starting that process as well, which I know will take some time.
Is that, you clear?
Well, at
It's
least to
mine.
make, we can
Here's it, okay,
move forward with
let
getting,
me do a Steamboat Days. Maybe Steamboat Days has the answer, and then we won't have to go any further than that, but I still
well,
think
and
a board would
I
be
think
nice.
that there are other groups that have an interest in at least making sure their voice is heard through that process. And as we work on, and we kind of, even when we met with Steamboat Days the other day, we kind of talked about wanting to make sure that some of those concerns were addressed. And I think that means that the other groups that have a vested interest need to make contact with,
Steamboat
make more
Days.
contacts with us and make sure that we get any concerns that they want to make sure get addressed,
Certainly, that's.
answered through that process.
That's my concern,
I
because
thought
I don't
it-
want anyone to feel alienated.
I thought that I spoke with every group from Burlington that does business down there, and I thought that I didn't get anything that would tell me any different that we need.
There are concerns that I think pretty much every group would want to make sure was at least part of that process.
Yeah.
If nothing more.
That makes sense.
We're good?
Yeah, so long as, yeah.
I think we're good moving forward. I think we're good. Okay. We're about done. Last one is number 3. We had city manager replacement, and I'm gonna pass on this discussion item. We're gonna table that, and we're just gonna table it. So, Mr. Tislin,
Is that okay with everybody if we?
I'm sorry. Is that all right if everybody, with everybody?
Sure.
I prefer to table that for right now. Is that all
I
right?
was going to suggest the same.
Thanks, bro. Sorry about that. Mr. Tisland? Council lady?
Good, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Mr. McGregor?
That was his professional voice, too, and did you notice how he did that? Mr. McGregor.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about West Avenue, West Burlington Avenue
Roundabout?
roundabout.
Well, it will be officially open tomorrow morning.
Are you sure?
Yes, positive. It's happening. So,
Thank you.
Looks good, man. It looks good.
be right away in the morning.
All right.
Thank you. I'm good now, Mayor.
Okay. Counselor, Bishop Fleming?
I'm good at this time.
Okay. City Manager? Okay, then we're done for the night. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, council.
Thanks, everybody.
You're a man.